Hello and welcome. Today we're going to explore something unusual, a story that doesn't scream for attention, but rather hums with quiet wonder. It's a tale without violence, without certainty, and without an ending. A mystery that arrived with the waves and vanished just as softly. This is not the kind of story that jumps out and startles. Instead, it's the kind that lingers. It settles into your thoughts like fog over the sea. Some stories are loud. This one is a whisper, one that's been carried on the wind for over 2 centuries. So, before we go any deeper, take a moment to follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on, but only if you genuinely find this content valuable. And while you're here, feel free to share where in the world you're listening from. It's a quiet joy to know where each ear is tuning in from, all across this drifting blue planet. So, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, I invite you to lend an ear for a little while, and let's explore this mystery together. You step onto a cold beach, somewhere along the eastern coast of Japan. It is the early months of 1803. The sand crunches softly beneath your feet, damp and cool from the tide that has just retreated. Ahead, villagers gather in a loose circle, their sleeves pulled tight against the sea wind. They're murmuring, eyes fixed on something stranded in the shallows. At first, you think it might be a small boat, some fishing vessel lost and returned. But as you approach, you see the shape is all wrong. It's round, perfectly so. The vessel looks like a bowl turned upside down, about the size of a small room. The bottom half is made of wood, coated in a thick layer of black paint or resin. The upper half appears to be made of something harder, metal perhaps, fitted with strange glass windows set all around. It sits half buried in wet sand, the tide no longer trying to claim it. You notice an opening, a kind of hatch, partly ajar, and inside, the villagers say, is a woman. You hear one of them whisper her description before you see her. Unusual hair, unusual face, foreign, not from here, perhaps not from anywhere. Your breath fogs gently in the cold air as you take a step closer. The woman inside is seated calmly. She does not appear afraid. Her skin is pale, nearly luminous in the filtered sunlight. Her hair is long and reddish, unlike any tone you've seen in these parts. Some say it looks like copper, others like fire smothered in snow. She wears garments you do not recognize, layers of fabric embroidered with symbols that don't belong to any known script. Not kanji, not anything else. The cloth drapes her like a tapestry, not clothing meant for labor or travel. She says nothing. She holds something tightly in her lap. A box, rectangular, polished, dark wood. Both hands rest on it firmly, as though it matters more than anything else in the world. No one dares take it from her. You notice the air inside the vessel is heavy with a faint scent, like dried leaves and sea salt, mixed with something slightly sweet. A smell you can't place, not quite perfume, not quite spice. The villagers argue in soft voices. Should they take her in? Should they report her? Is this an omen? You sit back listening, letting the scene soak in. One man swears the vessel was brought here by divine hands. Another thinks she's the daughter of a European sailor. A few think she is not alive at all, but some kind of doll or vision. You watch her blink, slow and deliberate, as if time works differently behind her eyes. What strikes you most is the silence. She does not cry, shout, or plead. She only watches. The waves hiss at the shore behind you, as though commenting in some old, watery language. You look again at the vessel, this Utsuro-Bune, as the locals will soon call it, literally hollow ship, a phrase that sounds more poetic than nautical. Later you'll hear this isn't the first time something like this has happened, that there are stories in other villages, other strange vessels, other mysterious women, but for now it is just this one moment, this beach, this wind. You crouch near the hull and run your hand along the blackened wood. It's smooth, not like any fishing boat. There's no barnacle growth, no algae, no sign it's been in the water long, but also no way it could have come from land. One child tosses a pebble toward the metal dome. It pings gently and falls away. The woman doesn't react. A dog barks in the distance. A gull cries overhead. Still, the woman remains, seated, still, and silent, as though waiting, as though her arrival was only the first part of some unfinished script. You step back, letting the image fix itself in your memory, the round vessel, the foreign woman, the murmuring crowd. A scene out of place and time, caught between understanding and imagination. It is here on this wind-brushed beach that the mystery begins. You take another step closer, and this time her eyes meet yours. There's nothing threatening in her gaze, just something unreadable, a stillness, as though her thoughts drift far from this beach, or perhaps from this world altogether. She blinks once, slowly, and lowers her eyes again to the box in her lap, clutching it more tightly as if to remind herself it's still there, still closed. The villagers murmur behind you, now more curious than cautious. One of them, an elder with weathered hands and sea-wrinkled eyes, steps forward and calls to her gently. In Japanese, no response. He tries another dialect. Still nothing. A younger man tries Dutch just in case. His father once traded in Nagasaki, and the language lingers in his memory like a half-learned prayer. The woman watches, but she says nothing. You notice again the box in her lap. It isn't large, perhaps the size of a thick book, lacquered black with reddish trim. It has no hinges or visible latch, no ornamentation, yet she holds it with such reverence, such firmness. You sense that it holds her story inside. She does not let anyone near it. When a curious hand drifts too close, she clutches it tighter and turns her body away. She does not speak, but her message is clear. This is not for you. You hear someone say she might be a lost daughter of a foreign noble. Another suggests she is a messenger, and the box contains a letter meant only for one person. A warning, perhaps, or a confession. A few step back uneasily. If it is a message, they whisper, then maybe it's not meant for them. Maybe they're not supposed to see it. You wonder gently whether she even knows what's inside the box herself. Time seems to slow in the quiet that follows. The waves hush behind you. The wind softens and the cluster of onlookers slowly thins. As the day drifts toward dusk, you remain nearby, seated on the sand a few paces away from her vessel, just watching. The wind brushes strands of her reddish hair across her face, but she does not move them. Her expression is calm, not blank. There's something behind it, but it's muted as though she exists behind a pane of thick, slow-moving glass. The villagers have brought her food, simple rice, pickled vegetables, a cup of water. She accepts it wordlessly, bows once, eats delicately. You watch how she moves, every gesture quiet and deliberate. She never sets the box down, not even to eat. A small part of you starts to wonder, what if the box is all that connects her to where she came from? What if, without it, she's simply untethered? Or maybe it's a kind of compass, though not the kind that points north. One man begins sketching the vessel, the dome, the glass windows, the thick tarred base. He draws the woman too, and the box. These sketches, he says, will be sent to Edo, to the scholars who may better understand what's happened here. The drawings will survive. You'll see them someday, reproduced in old scrolls. You'll read about them in centuries to come, passed down like a strange poem whose language no one quite speaks anymore. But now, as the sky begins to blush with evening, you sit with her still. The wind has turned cool, and the waves no longer reach the hull of the vessel. A few villagers bring lanterns, setting them around the perimeter to keep the darkness at bay. One flame flickers too close, and she flinches. Not in fear exactly, but like someone guarding something flammable. A few begin to wonder if the box is dangerous. You hear theories whispered like bedtime stories. Maybe it contains a curse, a piece of forbidden knowledge. Maybe it's sealed not to keep people out, but to keep something in. But there is no fear in her, only protection. And there's something else, you can't quite name it yet. A sadness, a sense of exile, or simply distance. Not the kind measured in miles, the kind measured in memory. You sit a while longer and close your eyes, letting the hush of the evening lull you. You picture her life, before the waves brought her here. What kind of place sends a woman across the sea alone in a sealed, round craft? You imagine a world where vessels are built to hide, not to sail. And what of the box? What if it's not meant to be opened? What if it's like a dream, something meant to be carried, not explained? You open your eyes again and find her still there, still silent, still holding that dark box with pale fingers. The flame light catches the edge of its lacquer and reflects back at you like an eye half shut in sleep. She breathes in deeply, then looks out toward the water. Always the water, as if she's waiting for it to call her back. The box. That's where your eyes keep drifting now. More than the vessel, more than the woman, it is the box that anchors your attention. It's unassuming at first glance, wooden, polished, rectangular. But the longer you watch her hold it, the more you sense that it carries weight beyond its size. She hasn't set it down, not once. Not even when she sleeps. If she does sleep, some say she hasn't, that she sits upright all night, eyes half closed, hands resting gently on the top of the box like it's part of her. Not an object, but an extension. You move closer the next morning, carefully, quietly, and she allows it. She even meets your gaze again, softly, not startled, and lowers her eyes as if in greeting. It's a moment, small, wordless, but it happens. You study the box now. There's no lock, no visible seam or latch, no hinge or clasp. Its edges are too smooth, its corners slightly rounded, almost as though carved from a single block. Not a scratch on its surface. The wood is dark, so dark it nearly drinks in the sunlight. Yet under the right angle, there's a reddish sheen, like old lacquer with blood hidden beneath. And along the surface, faint carvings, not deep, not decorative, just a thin border etched into the grain, circling its perimeter in patterns you don't recognize. They're not kanji, not anything you've seen in written Chinese. They're not Dutch or English or Russian either. No one in the village can read them, but they repeat, the symbols again and again, looping like a chant that's lost its tongue. One older fisherman squints and says they remind him of driftwood carvings found long ago after a typhoon, symbols on splinters that washed ashore, unreadable and eerie. No one kept those pieces. They were burned. You wonder if the box was made where those carvings came from, or if it was made for this journey, if it is a gift or a warning or a memory. More people come to see her. Rumors have spread, as they do in small places. A few bring offerings, food, cloth, incense. One woman brings an amulet. The red-haired woman accepts these gifts with calm grace, but never offers anything in return. No gesture, no words. Except once, a child approaches her, a boy no older than 6. He steps up with wide, curious eyes, reaching toward the box. Not roughly, just with open wonder. And for a moment, something changes in her face. Her fingers tighten, yes, but her eyes soften. She leans just slightly toward the boy, not protectively, almost like she understands his impulse. But then she closes her eyes for a moment and leans back again, as if deciding, not yet, or not him. The boy steps away without fear, content just to have seen her this closely. And you, still seated nearby, notice that she exhales afterward, a long, slow breath, as if holding that decision required effort. You begin to wonder, what is inside that box that cannot be shared? One theory gains traction among the villagers. The box contains something sacred, an item that, if seen by outsiders, would break some oath or release some danger. A sacred relic from a faraway land, a piece of a broken deity, or perhaps a sealed soul. Another theory floats in, like mist over water, that the box is empty, but not useless. That it is a symbol of exile, a container not of objects but of memory, identity, that she carries it as a reminder, a tether, not because of what's inside, but because of what it means to her. This one touches something inside you. You've seen people carry things like that. Not always boxes, but tokens. A worn photograph, a single letter, an old key. Objects that hold no power on their own, except the meaning given to them. The kind of meaning that outlives logic. You imagine her traveling across the sea, not steering, not rowing, but drifting. A journey without control. Her only possession that box, and the silence she wraps around it. Maybe the box is the only thing she had permission to bring. Maybe she didn't choose to leave. Someone says the box must contain a jewel, or a fragment of a map, or a weapon. But no one dares ask her directly. The villagers still speak to her now and then, but she offers no response. Not in any language, not even in gesture. She listens, yes. She watches. She nods when offered food. She blinks slowly when someone bows. But beyond that, nothing. Only her presence, only the weight of the box in her lap. A samurai from a neighboring village arrives. Word has reached further than you thought. He demands to see the box, says it must be inspected for the safety of all. You see her reaction before he even approaches. She turns her body away, not with panic, but with certainty. She holds the box closer, pressing it into her chest like a heartbeat that doesn't belong to her body. The samurai hesitates. There is something in her refusal that does not invite challenge. And so he leaves. Some of the villagers say this must be a test, that if the box is ever opened, something irreversible will begin. Others say she's a guardian, that she protects everyone by keeping it shut. You sit quietly and wonder something else. What if the box isn't meant to be opened on this side of the sea? What if it only opens when she reaches the place she's going? Or the place she left? You look again at her face, unmoving, unreadable. You remember the child's reach and her breath afterward. This box is not a mystery to be solved. It is a question to be held. And so, for now, you sit beside her. And you let it remain unopened. The wind picks up again, brushing across the sand and carrying with it a new layer of whispers. This time not from the villagers standing nearby, but from the very edges of the coast. Nature seems to sense that something unfamiliar rests here, something that doesn't belong, yet hasn't been rejected. As you sit in the shifting silence, stories start to ripple around you. Not just observations now, but interpretations. You hear the first whispers of legend taking root. She's a fallen star, someone murmurs behind you, sent here in a shell of light. No, another says. She's the daughter of a sea spirit. That box holds her voice. She gave it up in exchange for something else. One man recalls the story of Urashima Taro, the fisherman who was taken beneath the sea to a palace of wonder. He returned with a box he was told never to open. When he finally did, he aged hundreds of years in an instant. The woman, they say, may carry a similar fate within her box for someone else to bear. You listen to these stories not because you believe them, necessarily, but because each one reveals more about the people around you than about the woman herself. They are building meaning around her, filling in the silence she refuses to break. And you realize she is becoming legend already. There's a kind of quiet fear in their tone. Not panic, not dread, but that low, cautious awe humans reserve for things that hover just outside comprehension. Not monstrous, but liminal, strange, sacred. You sit near a fire that night, listening. The wind circles the coals, tugging smoke in spirals. Someone says she's a foreign princess, banished for breaking some forgotten law. Her boat, a punishment. Her silence, an oath. Another believes she is dead, not truly, but spiritually, cast adrift between the world of the living and the next. A Shiryo, a spirit that does not belong to any shore. And then a fisherman leans forward and says softly, "She's not from anywhere near here, not from this world at all." The others fall quiet. The man continues, speaking as though he's repeating something remembered from a dream. "She came from above, from a place where there's no sea, no sand, no sky as we know it. They sent her here with that box. Maybe it's a gift. Maybe it's a warning." You hear the fire pop as though reacting to the idea. "She doesn't talk," he continues, "because there are no words we'd understand." Someone chuckles nervously, brushing it off, but the silence afterward carries weight, as if something in that wild tale doesn't seem so impossible, not anymore. Because truly, what do you make of it? A round ship, sealed and strange. A woman whose appearance does not match any known nation. A box never opened. Symbols unreadable. Languages unspoken. And all of it arriving silently on the tide. What is more alien than that? You look to the stars, half hidden behind low clouds. The constellations remain unchanged, but they feel closer tonight. As if, just for a moment, one might dip low enough to touch the sea. In the quiet that follows, the woman still sits within her vessel. She has not moved much, has not changed clothes, has not slept, so far as anyone can tell. Her posture is straight, her hands gentle on the box, her face passive but not empty. And the whispers continue. You hear about a traveler from a distant province who once told a tale like this, of a woman arriving in a strange craft, staying for a few days, and then disappearing into the mist. But no one believed him. Until now. A monk visits, drawn by these stories. He bows deeply before her, offers incense and chants softly. She neither responds nor recoils. He leaves a scroll beside her, wrapped in silk. She does not touch it. Another theory surfaces, this one darker. A villager speaks of omens, bad harvests, failing crops. He thinks her arrival marks the beginning of some hidden punishment, that the box holds not a gift, but a curse sealed away. He wants the vessel burned, sent back to the waves. But others object. She's done no harm, not spoken, not struck, not fled. There is no fear in her and no evil in her presence. Only silence, only watching. It becomes clear the stories people tell about her say more about themselves than about her. To the fearful, she is danger. To the curious, a riddle. To the lonely, perhaps, she is company. But to you, she is still unknown, and that unknown is peaceful. You feel no urge to disrupt her silence, no need to understand all at once. You're content to observe, to imagine, to let the story unfold on its own time. A wind gust rustles the grass near the dunes. The villagers look up. Something about the way the air moves, quick, circular, reminds them of the strange vessel's arrival. You catch your breath, thinking for a moment it might rise, might lift and drift away like it came. But it does not. It rests unmoving. So she remains. Not claimed, not understood. The woman in the round boat, holding her box. The beach, once just a stretch of ordinary shore, now holds a memory that will never truly leave. A whisper carried in the wind, folded into every story that begins with, "I once heard about a woman." You listen to the murmurs, to the wind, to the waves brushing the hull of the vessel, as though speaking in a tongue older than any language you know. You do not try to interpret it. You simply let the story live. The morning air is crisp, heavy with mist that clings to the tall grasses along the dunes. You walk once more toward the vessel, its dome reflecting the pale gray sky in soft ripples of light. The woman is awake, or rather, she is still. There is no clear line between her sleeping and waking, only the continuous thread of quiet presence she holds. Today, your eyes fall not on her, nor the box, but the inside of the vessel. You crouch near the opening, just close enough to peer inside without crossing whatever invisible line she holds between herself and the world. There on the interior walls of the vessel you see them, symbols, dozens of them, faintly inscribed, barely noticeable unless you're looking for them. They spiral across the surface, etched or burned into the metal or wood or whatever strange blend of materials the structure is made of. You trace a few with your eyes, looping, curling, some geometric, others almost organic. None match the writing systems you know, not kanji, not Latin script, not Cyrillic or Arabic or any of the many characters you've seen on scrolls, books, maps. You hear someone say they look like constellations. Someone else thinks they're a kind of code, a ciphered message perhaps, waiting for the right key. The symbols run along the inside in no particular order that you can discern, but they repeat in places. One shape, almost like a leaf twisted into a spiral, appears 3 times, evenly spaced. Another resembles a trident with curved prongs. Each symbol seems deliberate, but none offer a clear clue. A local scholar, drawn from a neighboring town, arrives with an old ledger tucked beneath his arm. He carries a soft brush and charcoal, and with the woman's quiet allowance, her gaze meeting his, then looking away, he gently traces the symbols onto thin rice paper, preserving them. He'll take them back to his home, study them, share them, and still he won't be able to read them. He says so himself. This writing, it's not ours. It's not anyone's I know. Others come to see, some with genuine curiosity, others with suspicion. One theory suggests the writing is divine, not meant for human eyes, that to try to read it is to disturb something sacred. Another theory claims it's proof of her foreignness, perhaps Russian or from the far northern islands, where languages blur at the edge of maps. But you don't think it's foreign in that way. The vessel is too strange, too sealed, too precisely unlike anything built by hand and hammer. And the symbols, they feel older than nations. You step back again, looking at the vessel from a slight distance now, and notice something else. The glass windows set into the upper dome, 4 in total, evenly spaced, are covered in thin film from the salt air, but behind them, something glints. Metal or ancho? Crystal? You can't be sure, but the interior of the dome seems built to reflect light in ways that make it hard to focus, almost as if it's designed not to be looked at for long. The more you stare, the more you feel your own reflection staring back, distorted, warped. One of the younger villagers likens it to a lantern made of mirrors. But you know better. It doesn't shine outward, it draws in. Later, in the quiet of evening, you sit again by the shore and watch the woman as she gently presses her fingers to one of the carved symbols on the inner wall. She doesn't write anything, just holds her hand there, eyes closed. as if remembering something, as if somehow the vessel is remembering too. And again, no words pass between you, only these quiet gestures, this rhythm of presence. She has not spoken, not even a syllable, but you feel something building. Not a language in the ordinary sense, something more like understanding. Someone proposes another theory, that the symbols are not a language at all, but a map, that they're meant to be followed, not spoken. A route marked in symbolic form meant only for those who know how to travel in other ways. Another counters that they are a kind of prayer or spell, that the vessel is protected by what's written within it. And then someone else says maybe she wrote them herself. The thought halts your breath for a moment. Could she be the author of this strange script? Not just its passenger, but its creator. Is the vessel a message and the symbols a form of speech that does not rely on voice? Is silent language for a silent voyage? The box, the vessel, the woman, and now the writing. Each part adding a layer to this living riddle. There is something undeniably human in the attempt to explain it all, to name the symbols, to match them with theories, to try and force them to mean something that fits inside a book, or a scroll, or a bedtime story. But maybe this is a language that doesn't translate. Maybe it's not meant to be cracked open like a lock. Maybe it's meant to be felt. You lie back in the sand, the sky soft above you, the stars not yet visible but promising their return. Your thoughts drift again to those repeating symbols. The spiral, the curved trident, the leaf-like loop. You imagine them glowing softly as if etched in light rather than ink. What message could be so important that it must be sent without words? Or so delicate that it can only be trusted to silence? You close your eyes listening to the rhythm of the sea, and for a moment you imagine you can hear the symbols themselves. Not speaking, but singing, in a language only the wind can carry. You rise early the next day, your feet tracing the same path to the shore, drawn again by the strange gravity of the vessel. By now you know every curve of its surface, the shape of its windows, the subtle dents in its shell. The villagers have grown used to it too. The crowd is smaller this morning, quieter, as if a kind of respect has settled over the beach. Today your thoughts drift beyond the vessel's walls, beyond the woman's silence, beyond the box and its tight-lipped mystery. You begin to wonder, where did she come from? If not from here, then from where? It's a question that has circled silently in every observer's mind, but few have tried to answer it with anything beyond myth or poetry. You decide to follow the tide, literally. The beach slopes gently eastward, and the sea beyond is vast. You ask one of the fishermen, an older man with gray eyes and a mind sharpened by decades on the water, about the currents. He nods slowly, drawing invisible shapes on his palm with a calloused finger. This time of year, he says, the water moves south, then curls westward. If she came here by accident, she may have drifted along the Kuroshio. The black current, warm, swift, vast. It coils up from the Philippines, passes Taiwan, sweeps along the southern coast of Japan, then bends eastward into the Pacific. It carries more than just water. It carries driftwood, debris, sometimes even small boats lost and wandering. A few years back, he says, a broken canoe washed ashore with no name, no paddles, just an old fishing net and a hollowed gourd. Could have come from halfway across the world, he mutters. You picture it now, the strange round craft adrift among the rolling sea. No sails, no rudder, no oars, just the wind and current guiding it like a leaf. Could she have come from China, from Korea, the Ryukyu Islands, or someplace beyond, far from any mapped shore? You ask another man, quiet, scholarly, a former sailor who once served aboard a Dutch trading ship. He says the vessel's build doesn't match anything he's seen. Not Chinese, not Korean, not even Western. Too smooth, too seamless. The iron bands around the dome, impossible to rivet by hand, he says, not with our tools. Then what? Where? Some begin to wonder if she was built not for sailing at all, but for something else. For floating, or descending, or returning. The idea hovers in your mind like mist. This was never a ship in the traditional sense, not something built to go from one harbor to another. It has no anchor, no mast, no flag. Instead, it feels like an object of transition, a vessel in the truest sense, not of travel, of passage. A boy sketches the vessel in the sand with a stick, its round bottom, its glass windows, the tiny hatch. Then he draws a line trailing behind it, like a current, and begins placing dots in the ocean beside it. Islands, he says. Maybe she came from one of these. The islands, yes. Japan's waters are scattered with them, many small and uninhabited, some barely more than rocks rising from the sea. What if one of those held a hidden community, a place lost to time or secrecy? You recall stories of phantom islands, ones that appear on ancient maps, only to vanish centuries later. Legends of places that surface only during certain tides or under particular moons. You speak with an elderly woman who remembers hearing of such an island as a child. Kujira no Shima, she calls it. Whale Island. It was said to move like the creature it was named after, always drifting, always disappearing. Perhaps the woman in the vessel came from there. Perhaps she is the last of her kind, sent away as the island submerged for the final time. Others speak of lands lost to the sea, tales passed down from generations before, of earthquakes and rising waters swallowing entire villages. Some believe she's a survivor, others a messenger. You look again toward the horizon, letting your eyes settle where the sea fades into sky. The wind tastes faintly of salt and something older. You close your eyes trying to picture her journey. Not a journey of purpose, but of necessity. A drifting, a quiet exile. You return to the vessel and find her watching you. Not intently, not expectantly, just watching. Her hands rest on the box as always, but her posture has changed slightly. More open, not quite an invitation, but a softening. You sit nearby in silence. Let the tide speak for both of you. She glances toward the sea, and for the first time, you think you see something in her face. Longing, not fear, not confusion, something gentler. The way someone looks toward the door of a home they can no longer enter, or the edge of a road they were forced to leave behind. She turns back toward her box and closes her eyes. The waves continue their quiet hush. You wonder if she dreams of the place she left, or the place she was meant to reach. You wonder if the vessel knew the way, even when she did not. And as you sit there, the thought returns again. This wasn't a ship. It was a cradle, a shell, a story waiting to be told not in words but in stillness. So you stay, and you listen. As the days pass, your focus shifts again. The vessel, the box, the writing, they remain as fixed points in this quiet storm of mystery, but now your eyes are drawn to what wraps around the woman's body. Her clothing. It does not flutter in the wind like the robes of the villagers. It hangs heavier, with a texture you can't quite name. The fabric seems layered but not thick. It moves slightly when she shifts, giving off the faintest shimmer in the firelight. Not bright, not reflective, but a quiet glow, like the underside of a pearl or the skin of a moonlit fish. The villagers have tried to describe it. One woman calls it silk, but then shakes her head. No, not silk. It's tougher, yet softer somehow. Doesn't wrinkle like cloth should. A seamstress comes forward one afternoon, kneeling gently in the sand, her practiced eyes scanning every fold of the woman's garment. She says the stitching is foreign, closer to European styles perhaps, but unfamiliar in technique. Too even, too precise. There are no visible seams on the outer layer at all. And there, beneath the light outer robe, you glimpse something else. A lining of a deeper, glossier material, almost metallic in appearance. It clings closer to her form, as if designed not just for modesty or beauty, but for protection, like armor disguised as art. You remember the tales of travelers who wore garments woven with purpose? Waterproof cloaks lined with sealskin, robes embedded with herbs to ward off spirits. But this is different. This is something else. You sit nearby that evening and watch how the light from the village lanterns plays along the fabric's edge. It catches in ways natural cloth does not. You wonder if it's even fabric at all. Could it be something new or something old, forgotten, a lost art from a lost place? Theories gather like mist. One man swears it must be foreign. Western, he says, perhaps English or Portuguese. But someone else counters, why would a foreigner sail alone in that kind of vessel, dressed like that, with no flag, no mark of nation? Another wonders aloud if it's ceremonial clothing, something meant not for travel but for a ritual, a rite of passage maybe, a farewell, a burial. And the box, always the box, remains untouched in her lap. The way she holds it, cradled between those strange garments, makes you think of old scrolls wrapped in silk and sealed with care. meant only for a chosen reader. Maybe her entire outfit is like that, layer upon layer, each one meaningful. Each piece part of a message you're not meant to read, only to witness. The sandals on her feet are the most ordinary part of her attire. Simple, flat, worn. The only detail suggesting she might have once walked somewhere, across wooden floors or temple stones, but even those are different in construction. No rope, no visible stitching. They feel made not by hand but by form. That evening, a group gathers near the fire and begins sharing folktales again. One story, old and half-remembered, tells of a woman who came from the sea, dressed in fabric woven from the feathers of seabirds and stitched with coral thread. She spoke no known language, but those who touched her robes dreamed in tongues they didn't understand. Another tale speaks of a woman who walked out of a mountain cave wrapped in cloth made from spider silk, shining in the moonlight. She brought warnings or perhaps blessings. No one could agree which. And then someone says this: what if the clothes aren't hers? That thought stills the group. What if she didn't choose them? What if they're part of the journey, not the traveler? You look back at the woman then, seated in her vessel like always, her posture unchanged, her eyes calm. Could the garments be her uniform? Or her cage? You notice faintly tiny threads along the cuffs of her sleeves, threads that seem to glow just slightly when the firelight catches them at the right angle, as if embroidered with something more than dye. You remember the symbols inside the vessel and wonder if her clothing bears them too, hidden in the folds. A traveling monk who had once studied medicine leans in and says, "Her skin, have you noticed? It doesn't show wear. No sunburn, no bruises, no dirt." It's true. Despite the salt air, the sand, the many hours seated in one position, her appearance has not changed. Her garments have not torn. Her hair has not matted. She is untouched by the elements, as if preserved or protected. One child whispers that she's a doll come to life, a walking silent doll made by a god or a spirit. Beautiful, yes, but sealed, not meant to speak, not meant to change. But then she turns her head slightly, following the movement of a kite overhead. And that small motion alone breaks the spell of the doll story. She is alive, just different. You sit down again, a little closer this time. You don't ask questions. You just breathe the same sea air and let the silence do its work. Her robe shifts gently in the wind. You imagine the hands that made it, the place it was made, whether it came from a temple or a palace or a machine you've never seen. Whether its thread holds meaning or memory or protection, you wonder if she ever wore anything else. Or if this is how she arrived in the world, robed in mystery, carrying silence in both her hands and the box in her lap. That night, you dream not of her face but of her clothing, of endless fabric unwinding from the sea. And somewhere, far below the waves, someone's sewing in silence. The wind shifts again, this time bringing not just salt and sand, but the rustle of paper. A visitor arrives from inland, his robes stained with ink, his fingers marked with the faint black lines of brush and scroll. He introduces himself only as a chronicler. No title, no fanfare. Just a man with a case of tools and a quiet interest in the strange. He bows to the woman in the vessel. She does not move. He bows to the villagers. They nod respectfully. And then he begins his work. By the firelight, he spreads out his tools. A stack of blank rice paper, jars of ink, brushes trimmed to different widths. He kneels with practiced ease and in silence begins to draw. First the vessel, its round belly, its narrow hatch, the strange windows placed at measured intervals around the dome. Then her, the woman. He captures her posture, her face, the soft curve of her hands around the box. And finally the symbols inside. You sit beside him as he works, watching the strokes take shape. He paints with precision, but without haste, as if each line is a prayer. He tells you softly that he's not the first to draw her, that news of the vessel has reached not only his village, but others, across borders, across domains. "I've heard 3 similar tales," he murmurs. "Different towns, different years, all the same shape, all the same silence." You blink. 3? "Yes," he says. "One in Hitachi, one in Haratono, one further south. Always the same description. A round ship, a pale woman, a box." He unfurls a scroll from his case, an old one, frayed at the edges. On it, another sketch. Not as fine as his own work, but unmistakably similar. A vessel like a giant incense burner with slits for windows. A woman inside, her hair long and dark in this version, but her hands clasped around a small box just the same. The chronicler sighs. I don't know if it's the same woman or if there are many, but the stories repeat. You feel the hairs on your arm lift, ever so slightly. He shows you another account, this one written, not illustrated, an old document, catalogued by an official in 1803. It describes the incident in some detail. A hollow ship drifting ashore, a strange woman speaking no known language, and her refusal to part with a sealed container. The writing is formal, almost clinical. But even there, between the lines, you feel the uncertainty. The same uncertainty you feel now, sitting here by the fire. These are not tales passed by mouth, the chronicler says, rolling the scrolls back into their cases. These are records, official ones. They were not meant to entertain, only to preserve. You ask why they aren't widely known, and he smiles gently. Some stories sink into the ocean of time, especially when they resist explanation. He gazes out at the vessel, half lit by lanterns, its shape black against the sky. She resists it, doesn't she? You nod. And then you wonder, why did these stories go quiet? Why weren't they passed down in the way of great legends, or recorded in every book of wonders? Maybe because they never offered answers. And in a world so full of uncertainties already, perhaps no one wanted another unsolvable thread in the fabric. But not this chronicler. He leans forward and dips his brush again, this time painting the box alone. Just the box. A square of darkness, framed in delicate red. She fascinates me, he whispers. But this, the box, that is the riddle. You ask him what he thinks is inside. A message, he says simply. Not for us. You turn back toward the vessel. The woman is still there watching the fire. Not the people, just the flames. Her expression is unchanged, but somehow she feels aware tonight. Not passive, not indifferent, just still. Others have begun to notice too, that her eyes seem to follow the chronicler, that when he drew the symbols, she blinked. Once, slowly. You wonder if she recognizes his intention, if, perhaps, she has seen men like him before. The chronicler tells you he will copy the symbols, every one, and bring them back to Edo. He hopes a scholar there might recognize a pattern. You're not so sure. Some patterns aren't meant to be recognized. They are meant to be repeated. And that's what echoes through your thoughts as you watch the chronicler work late into the night, recording what so many others have dismissed or misunderstood. There is no dramatization in his hand, no embellishment, just the quiet rhythm of brush on paper, preserving something fragile before it drifts out of memory. By morning, he has finished. He packs his scrolls and bows again to the woman. She lowers her eyes, just briefly. It feels like acknowledgement. And then he leaves. No farewell, no grand speech. Just a man with a record, walking back along the path through the dunes. Others will follow, you suspect. More curious minds, more cautious ones. But none will carry away the truth, not completely, because the truth is not just in what happened. It's in what can never be fully known. And so you remain, not to explain, but to witness. The beach is quieter now. The chronicler's departure seems to have pulled something out to sea with him. A hush has fallen, not of fear, but of pause, as if everyone is waiting for something, though no one can say what. You walk the shoreline alone this morning. The mist is thick, curling through the reeds and drifting like breath over the wet sand. Somewhere behind you, the woman remains in her vessel, still and watchful. But today, your attention turns elsewhere. There's a tale you've heard before. A quiet legend passed between fishermen, told on storm-watched nights and passed along by candlelight. It's about an island that doesn't stay still. You follow the threads of the story now, tracing them like driftwood scattered along the edge of the surf. They speak of Kujira no Shima, Whale Island, so named because of its shape and its behavior. It surfaces only rarely, they say, and never in the same place twice. It moves, sleeps beneath the waves, waits, and on certain days when the tide is just right, it rises. Not with crashing force, but with a quiet swell, like breath returning. And then, before long, it sinks again, vanishing below the surface like a whale diving into the deep. You begin asking the older villagers. Not directly, not boldly, but with care. Have you heard what you say, of an island that doesn't stay in place? Some say yes with a vague nod. One man recalls seeing something on the horizon as a boy, rising from the sea green and silent, then gone by the time he returned with his father. Others scoff. No such thing, they say. Stories to make children behave. But not everyone laughs. A retired sailor, thin, leathery, with a scar over his brow, leans against the edge of his boat and tells you plainly, it's real. He saw it once many years ago. Said it appeared in the fog, not on any chart. A shoreline with strange plants and sharp rocks, and no sound but the lapping of water. He didn't land. Didn't feel right, he says. You ask him what he thinks it was. He shrugs. A place not meant for us. And then softer. Maybe where she came from. The idea nestles into your thoughts like a shell in sand. What if there is a place the maps never caught? Not because it's hidden in distance, but because it doesn't stay. What if she didn't come from another country, but from an island that only visits the surface? A place between places, a liminal shore. That might explain the vessel, designed not for ocean travel but for arrival, built to float short distances, perhaps launched from just beyond the horizon. That might explain her silence. If the languages spoken here aren't spoken there, if speech itself is different or unnecessary, that might explain the box, if it's a relic of that place, a parting gift, or a guide home. And it might explain her stillness, if she isn't meant to be here at all. You wonder then, did she come willingly, or was she sent? You sit near the dunes, watching the sea, listening, imagining an island beneath the surface, not sunken but waiting. You picture it in your mind. Green hills, blue pools, structures built from stone and coral. Perhaps a community like this one. Quiet people with tasks and traditions. Perhaps none at all. Perhaps it's a place of solitude, or sanctuary, or secrets. A place where the rules are different, where time moves slower, where silence is language and boxes hold memory. And maybe when the island sinks, it leaves behind its messengers, or its mistakes. The woman in the vessel, could she be either? A fragment of the island's dream. You return to her that evening. The tide has risen slightly. Her vessel shifts with each wave, ever so gently, like it remembers how to drift. She watches the sea again, always the sea. You sit nearby, not speaking. And as the sky fades into night, something strange begins to happen. The air changes. Not colder, but deeper, thicker somehow, as if sound carries differently. And then you hear it. A low hum, barely audible, like wind caught in a bottle. It doesn't come from her. Not exactly. Not from the vessel either. It comes from beneath. The sand vibrates faintly. A hush spreads across the village. Even the dogs fall silent. Somewhere, just at the edge of hearing, something moves. A wave crests without a breeze. A lantern flickers out. You close your eyes and picture it, an island beneath the surface passing near. Not arriving, not landing. Just gliding past. And for a moment, you think you see something in her posture. The way she sits straighter. The way her head turns slightly as if listening to a voice no one else can hear. Then the moment passes. The air lightens again. The sand stills. And the sea goes back to being only waves. But you feel it in your bones. Something came close. And didn't stop. You look at her, and you know, she felt it too. Maybe it wasn't her origin. Maybe it was her destination. And now it's gone. Again. The days stretch on, each one braided with the same quiet rhythms. The wind combing the dunes, the villagers whispering by firelight, the sea returning again and again to the feet of the vessel. And always, always the woman remains, unmoving, unspeaking, her eyes on the horizon, her hands around the box. But something is different now. Not in her, in you. You begin to see the ripples of this mystery farther out, beyond the beach, beyond the island, even beyond the borders of the country. You recall conversations, half-remembered stories told in passing, tales from other shores and other times. And then you remember something recent. A voice on the road, a merchant with a foreign accent, speaking to a group at the inn where you once stayed. He'd been reading new theories, strange ideas from Western scholars, ideas about flying machines, lights in the sky, people not of this earth. At the time, it sounded like fantasy, but now, you begin to wonder. You take to walking the cliffs in the evening, looking out to the east where the sky deepens into velvet. You think not just of other islands now, but of other worlds. The vessel, round, sealed, with glass windows and metallic panels, it doesn't match any known boat. It looks less like something that sails and more like something that lands, or crashes, or returns. You recall the scholar who said its construction was beyond local craftsmanship, and the chronicler's record of multiple sightings, overlapping, repeating across different provinces, always the same figure, always the same box. You begin to connect threads that aren't meant to be connected. And yet they feel true. You remember the child who said she looked like a doll, not quite alive, not quite human. You remember her robes, her stillness, her lack of speech. And now a new theory takes root, slow and quiet like moss between stones. She is not from any island. She is not from this world. You say it aloud to yourself one evening, just to see how it sounds in the air. She came from the stars. The words feel foolish, and yet not wrong. You begin to notice others thinking it too, though no one says it plainly. But the way they glance at the night sky, the way they avoid looking too long at the strange metal ring around the base of her vessel, the way they speak less now of lost islands and more of messages. One man, an old friend of the chronicler, brings a new scroll, not a record this time, but a theory, a translation of foreign writing. It speaks of chariots of the heavens, visitors clothed in light, and gifts from the void. He reads it to a small group gathered at twilight, and though no one says it aloud, every gaze drifts toward her. You don't need fire or smoke or symbols in the sky. The vessel itself speaks. Its shape, its seamless hull, the way it resists time. It was built for something we do not understand. And the woman, it's not just her silence, but her stillness, like she's conserving energy, waiting, like she's been here before. Could she be an observer, a scout, a relic of some intelligence that sees the world not as we do, but as patterns and rhythms? Or is she something else entirely, something sacred to them, set adrift for reasons beyond our knowing? The box, too, gains new weight. Maybe it's not just a relic. Maybe it's a beacon, a signal, a device not yet active, waiting for the right time, the right place, the right return. You begin to feel something deeper, not fear, but reverence. You sit with her again, close now. You've earned that place. And though she does not speak, you feel a kind of presence in her silence, like she's listening. Not to you, but to everything. The sound of the sea, the pulse of the earth, the drift of the stars. You look up, and the sky is clean and vast. A single star moves, not fast, not blinking like a plane, just moving steadily in a line. You blink, it's gone, or maybe never there. You wonder if it came looking for her, if it will return. Back near the vessel, a boy lays shells in a pattern around the sand, circles within circles. His father asks why. To help her find her way home, he says. And you realize, none of us know what home means for her. Not really. Maybe she doesn't either. Maybe that's why she waits. Maybe she's stranded. Or maybe she's exactly where she's supposed to be. A living artifact. A question placed gently into our world to see what we do. You close your eyes, the ocean breathing softly nearby. And for the first time, you consider not whether she's from here or there, but whether it matters. Because whatever her origin, she's here now. And maybe that's enough. To wonder, to witness, to let the unknown sit beside you unafraid. The village has changed, though no one says it directly. There's a stillness in the way people move now, a new rhythm that hums beneath everyday tasks. The woman in the vessel is no longer a curiosity. They no longer gather in crowds to stare or murmur theories. They pass by softly, respectfully, like one does near a shrine. It's not fear that holds them back anymore. It's reverence, and perhaps uncertainty. You spend more time with the elders now, listening to their thoughts and the way they prefer to share them. Slip between sips of tea, spoken in half phrases, left open-ended. One evening, beside the warmth of a small hearth, a former temple caretaker speaks. Not all truths are meant to be solved, he says, gazing into the embers. Some are meant to teach us how to sit with not knowing. He has heard the theories, foreign princess, ocean spirit, star being, but he is less concerned with origin. What matters, he says, is meaning. What does it teach us, he asks gently, that we do not understand her? You let the question hang in the air. It does not need an answer. That's when the idea settles in you. This story, this event, this vessel, it doesn't belong to folklore or fantasy alone. It sits on the edge of something else. It belongs to history. There's a quiet pattern in the scrolls, the sketches, The careful accounts passed hand to hand. It's easy to forget that long before television or cameras or printed books, people still documented what confused them. They kept records. They drew what they could not name, not because they understood, but because they witnessed. And they knew witnessing had value. You recall the chronicler's scrolls, the ones copied from earlier accounts, with careful brushstrokes and matching details. A round ship, a silent woman, a sealed box. Not just once, not just here. This isn't a singular story. It's a motif, one that echoes faintly through time, each version carrying a familiar shape. Not identical, but close enough to recognize. You visit a small archive in a nearby town. With the help of a local scholar, you're allowed to view fragile texts, stored in layers of cloth and time. And there again you see it. An incident in 1803, another in 1801, yet another less detailed from the late 1700s. Always a vessel, always a woman, always the box. The scholar, modest, curious, shares a quiet thought. Perhaps, she says, this is a cultural mirror, a story that reflects our time back to us. We place our fears, our hopes, our misunderstandings into it. That's what folklore does. You ask her if she thinks the Utsuro-Bune is only legend then, a metaphor. She smiles. Legend and truth are not always in conflict, and that somehow feels right. You step back out into the sunlight, scrolls packed gently away in their silken wraps. You return to the village with the wind at your back, wondering if the woman knows she's been written about, remembered, or if her silence is part of that remembering. You rejoin the woman the next day, the sea hushing softly nearby. Her vessel is still, half settled into the sand now, a part of the landscape, and yet untouched by it. You think again of the symbols on the inner walls, the impossible geometry of the hull, the fabric of her robes that no one can name, the resistance to aging, to explanation. You think of how many people have now interpreted her, historians, monks, villagers, travelers, and how none of them can truly agree. And maybe that's the point. Maybe she was never meant to be understood, only seen. And in seeing her, something changes in the observer. That's what history doesn't always capture. Not the facts alone, but the feeling. She offers no answers, but she draws people into reflection. In her stillness, you learn patience. In her silence, you learn listening. And in her mystery, you learn humility. You remember the words of the old caretaker, how some truths are meant not to be solved, but sat with. She is such a truth. You sit beside her again as the sun begins to lower and the tide curls forward inch by inch. And in that moment, it no longer matters where she came from or why. What matters is that she is here. What matters is that you are too. Two shapes side by side, not understanding each other, but not needing to. Today you stand beside the vessel again, not as an outsider, not even as a witness, but as something quieter, a shadow of the beach, a part of the moment. You reach out and touch the surface once more. It's smooth beneath your fingers, not like any wood you've handled before, cooler, harder, as if it has never been truly warm. The seams between its panels are invisible to the eye, as though it was poured into its shape rather than built. The base is coated in a tar-like black substance, thick and resilient, but there are places, just along the waterline, where it flakes ever so slightly. You collect a small piece, no larger than a scale, and hold it up to the light. It's dark, but when turned just right, there's a glint of something metallic in the heart of it. You show it to a carpenter in the village. He squints, runs his thumb over it, then shakes his head. Not from here, he mutters. Not from anywhere I know. And you're beginning to feel that too. You step back, studying the vessel as a whole, how it curves without break, how its dome reflects not only light, but distance, how its windows are not fitted, but fuse, glass-like in appearance, but harder, resistant even to stone. A child once threw a pebble against one. It bounced off with a sound you'd never heard before. Not a crack, not a thud. Something more like a hum, short and low. You'd forgotten about that until now. The more you look, the more it seems less like a boat and more like something else entirely. Not designed to survive the sea, but to withstand something else. You remember the theory one scholar whispered, embarrassed by the boldness of it. This is not a ship, it's a capsule. A capsule. Not to cross water, but to pass through something. Air, space, time. You crouch beside the vessel now, tracing the curve where wood, or what looks like wood, meets the black base. You remember the faint, almost imperceptible hum it emitted that night when the tide rose. The vibration you felt in your ribs, more than heard. You lean closer now, listen. Nothing. But the memory of that sound lingers like a tune you heard once in a dream. You peer through the glass again, careful not to get too close. Inside it's dark, even with the sunlight above. You can make out the symbols, yes, faint and strange, and the curved surface of what must be an inner wall. And now you realize something new. There are no rivets, no nails, no signs of fastening. Every piece flows into the next like sculpture. If someone built this, they did it with tools or knowledge that don't exist here. Maybe never have. You speak to the smith the next village over. He's an expert in ironwork, known for crafting everything from kitchen knives to ceremonial swords. You describe the vessel's structure, its glass, its shape. He frowns deeply. You say there's iron bands, yes, but no rust? None. No cracks where wood meets metal? None. No seams? You shake your head. He stares out at nothing for a long moment. Then what you have, he finally says, is not a boat. You ask him what it is, and he just shrugs. I don't know, and I don't like not knowing. He's not angry, just unsettled. You walk back slowly, letting your thoughts drift with each step. Not a boat, not of wood or iron or anything familiar. Not built to float, not in the way we understand. You arrive again at the vessel. The woman is there, as always. Her eyes open, fixed gently on the sky this time. You follow her gaze, and you feel it again. That quiet tug, that suggestion that whatever made this craft did not intend it to stay here, that it is paused, incomplete, waiting, like a seed that hasn't yet touched soil, like an answer not yet asked. You remember now an old story from long ago, of a sphere that fell from the heavens. In the tail, it landed softly without a sound, and when the villagers found it, it was warm to the touch. Inside, they found a scroll that none could read. Eventually, the sphere vanished, just as softly as it had come. That story, like so many, was dismissed, but now you see the same shape, the same silence. Perhaps these stories aren't fiction. Perhaps they are echoes. You crouch again by the vessel, running your fingers along the rim of the base. This close, you hear a faint sound, not from the vessel, but from the sea. The tide is higher again today. The waves creep forward like a breath held too long. You remember what the chronicler said. It has appeared before, maybe it will again. Or maybe it's always the same one, returning, like a comet or a thought. And then unexpectedly she shifts. Not much, but enough. Her hand slides from the box to rest lightly against the vessel's wall. Her palm lies flat against the metal, like someone recognizing a heartbeat. You see her eyes close. Just for a moment, and you realize something. She is part of the craft. Not its pilot, not its cargo, but something in between. A bridge. You step back, say nothing, because for all the strange materials, the impossible joins, the weightless stillness of the dome, this is what puzzles you most. Not the vessel itself, but her place in it. She belongs there, and not here. And yet, she stays. For now, there is no fanfare when it happens. No flare of light, no final word, no farewell. Just the sea brushing gently at the hull. And then one morning, she is gone. You wake early, like always. Step down through the mist toward the shoreline. The sky is the color of pearl, the waves unusually calm, the gulls are quiet. There's no reason to expect change. But as you crest the small rise above the beach, your breath stops. The vessel is missing. The sand is smooth where it once rested. No scrape marks, no drag lines, no scattered debris, only a shallow hollow, like a memory pressed into the earth. And faintly, as you stand there in silence, the imprint of its curved weight. You walk to the spot, kneel, touch the sand, still cold. The villagers gather slowly. No one speaks at first. They simply stand where the vessel once was, their expressions unreadable. You see disbelief in some, awe in others. A few seem quietly relieved, but most are simply still. Then someone asks the question that hovers above all others. Did we send her away? The truth is, no, but yes. You recall how, just days ago, some had begun to wonder if it was time. Not because they feared her, but because she did not seem to belong here. Her gaze had been drifting more and more toward the water. Her body, though unmoving, felt more and more like it was poised to go. There was talk, soft, respectful talk, about helping her return to the sea, placing the vessel back at high tide, letting it float if it would. And yesterday, they did. 4 men carefully, gently. They pushed the vessel free of its nest in the sand during the tide's peak. She had been seated inside, unchanged, the box in her lap, her eyes cast downward. They say she did not resist. She did not gesture. She simply blinked. And then the waves carried her away. Not swiftly, not far. She drifted just beyond the shallows for a time, bobbing gently like a leaf that had not decided where to land. And then, as the tide began to pull outward, she turned. The villagers say it didn't look like chance. The vessel faced away from the coast, its round form steady even in the current. And slowly, with the water whispering around it, it disappeared into the fog. No splash, no light, no sound. Just gone. You return to the beach now, your hands loose at your sides. The villagers have already begun to drift back to their homes one by one. No one marks the moment with ceremony. No one claims understanding. But something weighty hangs in the air nonetheless. Something final. The children draw circles in the sand where the vessel once was. One child in silence presses his palm into the center and leaves it there for a long while before pulling away. You remain long after the rest have gone. You sit where she sat. The sea stretches endlessly before you, unchanged and unknowable. And for the first time since her arrival, you are alone with the absence. You think of everything she didn't say, every word not spoken, every question unanswered. And you realize her silence wasn't a refusal. It was her offering. She gave stillness, and now she has taken it with her. You wonder where she is now. Is the vessel still drifting? Is it resting on a distant shore unnoticed? Or has it vanished entirely? Returned to wherever it came from, slipping through a door no one else can see? You picture her seated in the same way, the box still in her lap, eyes closed now, or open, looking upward, waiting, or arriving. Maybe she was never meant to stay. Maybe we were never meant to understand. Maybe her presence was the message. You lie back in the sand and look up at the sky, where the clouds move without urgency. The sea hisses beside you, old and endless. And though the vessel is gone, her stillness remains, pressed into the memory of this place, pressed into you. The days move on, though something inside you doesn't. There's no announcement, no monument, no carved stone to say, this is where she came, or this is where she left. The beach looks nearly as it did before, save for the smooth hollow in the sand that never quite fills in, even after several tides. As if the earth itself remembers her weight. The villagers speak of her less now, not because they've forgotten, but because the memory has settled. It's no longer something they hold in their mouths, it's something they carry behind their ribs like breath. But you're not done. You still walk the beach in the mornings, hoping, not with urgency but with wonder, that you might find something. A trace, a fragment, a line in the sand that points toward where the vessel drifted, or a sign in the sky that she is still near. Instead, you find something else. A story, another, and another. It starts with a passing merchant, then a visiting priest, then an old woman who traveled days from the north. They each carry something small, just a sentence, a sketch, a recollection. But each one echoes what you've already seen. In a fishing village on the west coast, a man claimed to have seen a drifting dome in his youth, though no one believed him. He said it shimmered like fish skin in the sunlight and held a woman with red hair who never left her seat. In a southern harbor, a record keeper once wrote of a vessel that came ashore quietly one foggy morning, containing a woman who spoke no known tongue, and vanished before anyone could decide what to do. And far inland, though it seems impossible, a tale has survived of a round, silent craft, seen floating not on water, but in a flooded rice field after a heavy storm. The farmer who found it swore the woman inside looked asleep, though her eyes were open. Each account is different in detail, but familiar in shape. The vessel, the woman, the box. You begin to understand the Utsuro-Bune is not just one story. It's a pattern, a shape that recurs, not as replication, but as echo. Maybe it's the same woman, returning again and again, like a moon that circles but never lands. Or maybe there are many like her, many silent vessels, many unopened boxes. You think back to the writing inside the hull, the spirals, the repeating trident shapes, the unbroken lines. Maybe they're not a language meant to be read in order. Maybe they're a visual rhythm, a kind of map, or a signature, something cosmic in its looping logic. One scholar you correspond with writes a phrase you can't forget. The Utsuro-Bune is a recursion point, a soft fold in time where mystery touches the world, then recedes. You sit with that for a long while. If it's true, then she didn't simply come to you. She came through you, through this place, through your attention. You revisit your notes, your sketches, your own memories. They remain vivid. The red in her hair, the silence in her breath, the strange hum of the vessel's walls, the solemn curve of her posture, and the box. Always the box. Still unopened, still unbroken. You wonder if it still rests in her lap, wherever she is now, or if someone somewhere has dared to open it, or if it can even be opened at all. You begin to imagine the possibility that its purpose is not to contain, but to complete, that without it, she cannot return, or without it, she forgets who she is. You begin to dream of circles. Circles inside circles, like ripples, like seals, like orbits. Each night you lie down and hear the hush of the ocean, even when the wind is still. It's in your bones now, a background song. And in that song you sometimes hear the suggestion of something returning. Not her, not yet, but the shape of her, a stillness, a question, a presence without answer. You wake not startled but certain. The story isn't over. It isn't even linear. It loops, like waves, like stars, like time. There's a point where mystery no longer feels like a puzzle. It's not something to be solved, but something to be held. A soft weight in the palm of your thoughts, turning slowly, reflecting light in ways you don't expect. That's where you are now, with her story, with whatever she meant and still means. And though she's gone, her presence lingers, not just on the beach, but in the minds of those who saw her, and even in those who only heard. You walk the shoreline one last time, slow and deliberate, letting each step settle fully before the next. The tide is out, the beach wide and open. The air smells of salt and morning. Somewhere inland, a rooster calls. But here, by the water, it's quiet. You kneel near the hollow where the vessel once sat. It's faded now, softer, but still there. An indentation in the shape of memory. You press your hand into it, not for answers, but for connection. You think of the theories, the celestial visitor, the lost islander, the messenger from the sea. None of them feel entirely right, and all of them feel partially true. She was something other. That much is certain. Her silence wasn't empty. It was full of meaning too large to say aloud. Her stillness wasn't passive, it was steady, anchored, like the eye of a storm that never arrived. You remember her clothing, that otherworldly shimmer, the impossibility of its stitching. You recall the box, heavy, sealed. Maybe it was a compass, or a memory, or just a shape we're not ready to understand. And the vessel, its hull seamless, its windows mute and watching. A craft built not for war or wealth or even survival, but for transition. A cocoon, a capsule, a kind of punctuation mark dropped gently into the story of the world. You think of the other sightings, the other villages, the other years. It wasn't just this beach, it wasn't just your time. She's appeared before. She may appear again. She may be part of something so vast that it only brushes against us in moments. A ripple across our waters. A reminder that there's more beyond the map, beyond logic, beyond language. And in that reminder, there is comfort. You let your eyes drift toward the horizon, the line where sky meets water, the place where all her paths led, and all your thoughts return. A few villagers walk the shore behind you, heads bowed not in grief, but in thought. One child hums a soft tune, slow and circular. You listen to it loop 3, 4, 5 times before fading. And you realize the story isn't one moment. It's the quiet after. It's the stillness she left behind. So now, here you are. The mystery has passed through your hands like water through fingers. You've walked the beach where the vessel came aground. You've listened to the silence she carried. You've studied the symbols, the stories, the strange material and stranger meanings. But more than anything, you've felt it, that gentle tug at the edge of understanding, that echo of something larger than language. The Utsuro-Bune will likely never be solved, and that's all right. Because not all things ask to be solved. Some things simply ask to be witnessed. Some mysteries come not to shake us, but to soften us, to invite a slower kind of wonder, the kind that settles gently, the kind that stays in the quiet hours, in the turning of dreams, in the rhythm of waves against the sand. So tonight, let it rest. Let her drift again in your mind, not with urgency, but with grace. Let the vessel remain sealed. Let the box remain closed. Let the woman remain still, her gaze turned gently to the stars. Let it all be. You don't need to know everything. You only need to remember that mystery lives with us, and sometimes it visits. Thank you for being here and for listening. Wherever you are, by sea or city, in quiet or in motion, I hope you carry this stillness forward.